Hi, everybody. 10 years ago, I cashed in a modest insurance settlement that I got from a car accident, and I went to travel the world. I had the Wanderlust. Now, lust is defined as an overwhelming passion or desire for something. Passion and desire I've never really had a problem with, but the something I wasn't quite sure about. Abandoning a career and my friends and family, I set out into the world, and I didn't quite know why, or what was I looking for. Inspiration, adventure, romance, danger. I think every time we get on a plane, we hope for all of that, as well as some good food, some good rest, maybe a few good stories. But I wasn't sure exactly what it is I would find out there. Would traveling help me answer the questions that I had any more than if I'd stayed at home? I was once in India on the Ganges. I found myself at a yoga ashram. I'm not a yogi. And I found myself in this ashram. Like many travelers, I went to India to try and find myself, right? And here I find myself bent over, trying to pull this maneuver that I'm just is way over my head. And my head is between my legs. And there's this militant German instructor, and she's kind of like driving everybody pretty hard with these positions. And she says, "Stop, stop, stop!" And she says, "Except you," and she points to me. And my head is like, I can feel the vertebrae in my spine just kind of cracking. And she comes over to me and she says, "This is all wrong!" And she grabs my ass. And because apparently I think my ass looked more like a hazelnut and not like a cashew or something. And she's like, "Wrong, you see this?" And she says, "Everybody, come feel, come feel." So I went to India to find myself, and here I found myself being felt up by a class of disapproval. Right. But between the running around India and exploring ancient rock temples in Ethiopia, falling in love in numerous countries and tasting things that actually do taste like chicken, I had these questions that needed answering. And so I came up with this experiment that I thought would help me answer them. Because if you're going to get the right answers, you've got to ask the right questions. This is a room full of travelers. Many of you have traveled. You know that when you travel, you meet so many people, right? When you're at home, you just don't seem to meet the cast of thousands, the diversity of characters that you meet when you're on the road. When I was in my early 20s, my late teens, I went backpacking around the world, various different places, and I've got tons of scraps of paper of people's names and addresses. This is before email, right? Tons of scraps of paper. And here I was 10 years later going on this big journey, and I knew I'd meet so many people. But I was a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more cynical. I had no desire to kind of gather more scraps, to have dog-cold promises of keeping in touch with people I'd never see again. But I knew that people were so important to my journey. So I thought, why don't I ask every single person that I meet the same questions, take their picture, and put it up on my website. With a little bit of diligence and discipline and maybe a few rules to keep it on track, Finish the Sentence was born. The night before I left, I sat down with my close friends and I told them this idea that I had. I said, I'm going to speak to every single person. I'm going to ask them 3 questions. And we came up with 3 open-ended questions that could be asked in any context, could be taken as seriously as anybody wanted to take them. They could joke about it. Anyone could opt out. They didn't have to have their photograph taken. It was really just a way for people to connect with people. By the time I put the notebook down and put this project to bed, I'd asked 1,732 people in 46 countries that I'd traveled to. The people came from 76 different countries. I'd asked them to finish the sentence. They came from all walks of life, rich and poor, young and old, glass half empty people, pints over the top kind of people. And wherever I went, whether it was a group dynamic or if it was just a one-on-one, finish the sentence always led to an engaging conversation. One of the rules was I had to meet somebody, I had to engage with them, communicate with them first. I couldn't just go canvassing random people on the street. That's not what this was about. It was about the people that you meet when you're traveling, that you share a bus ride with, or you meet them at a tourist attraction, or some museum, some hostel, some hotel. And then after a while, do you mind if I ask you these 3 questions? And, it's really interesting because as this project kind of started going, I'd be on the Gringo Trail in South America or the Banana Pancake Trail in Southeast Asia. And I'd meet people and say, can I ask you these 3 questions? And they go, you're the finish the sentence guy. I've heard about you from some other travelers. Because wherever I asked these questions, people really responded to them. It really touched them. And people would ask for my email, and then they would email me weeks later, sometimes years later, and say, do you mind if I change my answer? It seemed that both travelers and locals were thirsty for meaningful conversation. I didn't plan that. So what were the questions? What did I ask? Well, the first sentence I asked people to finish was, finish the sentence, I am inspired by. Inspiration as a concept has always fascinated me. What are we passionate about? What gets us excited? What do you wake up in the morning to do and you're excited to do it? It's a difficult thing to do in this day and age. I didn't know what my inspiration was before I went traveling. Tomorrow, my friend Sean Aiken is going to be talking about his one-week job project, and he really nails this. Inspiration is a hard thing to talk about. The second question, finish the sentence. I called it the Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy, but a little darker, a little bit more serious. Finish the sentence, I regret. When I asked this question, so many people responded nothing, almost like a defense mechanism. They didn't think about it too much, nothing. So I actually started to preface and say, finish the sentence, but your answer cannot be the word nothing. I regret. Sometimes, people say, nothing because I have no regrets because I've learned from my mistakes. And then I'll say, well, tell me a mistake you've learned from. And, sometimes we had this argument about semantics because regret is a very strong word. But I asked this question specifically so that we can look at our mistakes, the mistakes of other people, and they can tell me so that I don't repeat them, so that anybody who reads Finish the Sentence doesn't repeat them. It was a real effort to learn from our mistakes as opposed to try and repress them. One of my favorite writers is a guy named Tom Robbins, and he cites this study in this documentary called One Giant Leap, where they ask senior citizens this very question, finish the sentence, I regret. And I volunteer with seniors myself, and I've asked them the same question. And it's fascinating, because nobody regrets not making more money, not living in a bigger house, not having been more successful. The regrets from seniors are almost universal. Not traveling more, not spending more time with friends and family, not learning more. The last sentence that I wanted people to finish was something I wanted to bring back to the here and now. I wanted to end on a really positive note. And I said, finish the sentence, today I am grateful for. And every day blesses us with something, every day, even if we sometimes have to think quite hard what that is. I knew that by asking this question, I was getting people to consider, to look around and realize what they have to be grateful for. And they always did. They always did. It was really cool because whenever I asked this question, I could see this light going off behind the recipient's eyes. It would like start burning, and they'd look around and they'd go, yes. And I'd share in that, and it felt really great. It was really uplifting for both them and for me. I traveled to, like I said, 46 countries asking these questions, and obviously I don't speak 46 different languages. So I made a real effort to translate the key words, inspiration, regret, grateful, finish the sentence in all these different languages. I became really good at deciphering what people were trying to tell me, even if they didn't have the words in English. And usually there was somebody with me who could translate as well. I would have loved to have engaged locals in their native tongue, but unfortunately, I only speak 3 languages: English, bullshit, and drunkenese. There were only 5 people that I can recall, 5 people out of 1,700 that said no. They were shy, and there was one girl who thought I worked for some kind of Girls Gone Wild thing, and she was like super sketched out by it. I think today, with online privacy being such an issue, when a random stranger starts saying, "Hi, tell me some real personal things about your life," I don't know, maybe there would be a lot more no's. As you can see from this list, there was a real healthy representation of people from 6 continents. There were Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, Baha'is. I'm sure there were some Wiccans and Scientologists and off-world aliens in there as well. As I said, people came from every possible different background and different age group. And so what were the answers? What were the answers? I think a lot of things really came together for me when I realized just how universal we are, just how common, just how the shared experience of being human is. When a fisherman in Borneo told me that he's inspired by his family and he's grateful for his health, and then a few months later, I'm in Budapest and I meet an academic and professor, and he says, "I'm inspired by my family and I'm grateful for my health." You start seeing how everything really just comes together. I trawled through all these answers and I pulled out the most common answers. And this is what they were. I'm inspired by my parents, nature, music, traveling, books, love, courage, freedom, stories, peace. I regret, well, like we saw with the seniors, even young people are not that far removed. I regret not traveling more was the most common one. Things I didn't do, not taking chances, not spending more time with family and friends. I regret hurting other people, pain and suffering. And what about today I'm grateful for? Good health, family and friends. I'm grateful for my opportunities, for my life, for the freedom I have, for meeting new friends, for love, learning new things. I'm grateful for being here, for the sun, for my life and my boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, my partner. Where is the money? Where are the things? Where's the cars and the clothes and the electronics and the houses? You know, I'm not a sociologist, I'm a travel writer, and this was far from a scientific experiment. But it seemed to me, having interviewed all these people and asked them what's important in their life, that we spend so much time desiring things that ultimately aren't that important and too little time appreciating the things that are. As I kind of traveled around, I realized that there's this universality, there's this thing that just links everything together, that our jobs, our careers, which drive so much time and energy, wasn't the be-all and end-all. You know, a lot of people were inspired by their career, and a lot of people were grateful just to have a job, but it wasn't the driving force of their entire lives, certainly not according to what they told me. I met so many people and so many characters, and one day I'm going to write down some of these stories, because every conversation, every time I asked these questions, there was usually something cool going on. But I want to look at some of my some answers here. I have this thing when I travel, when I'm by myself, when I'm in a crowded room, I always look for the most intimidating person in the room. The person just looks like nobody's going to go talk to them because they just ooze a certain kind of look or energy, and that's the person I always go to speak to because they have the best stories, and they usually tend to turn out to be very nice people. This guy was in Dubrovnik, and he looked like some kind of retired CIA operative guy. He was by himself. He just looked like such a character. I went to go speak to him. His name was Danilo, and I asked him 3 questions after a while, and he said, "I'm inspired by former enemies becoming friends." And you know, where we were standing, I could see bullet holes in the walls from when Dubrovnik was shelled in the Serb-Croat War. And I didn't get into details with the guy, but when he said that, I could see something turn over for him. Like he really was, there was something that was bridging in his mind. A lot of people, when I asked them, what are you inspired by, said people. And I would usually say, what kind of people? Give me an example, tell me somebody. And Nelson Mandela was by far the most inspirational person that I found. And as a South African, that made me really proud. I was like, yeah. Uzma from Dubai said, I'm inspired by Nelson Mandela and Audrey Hepburn, which I thought was kind of interesting, putting those two characters together. This is Anthea in Argentina. She said, I'm inspired by youth, beauty, and ice cream. I thought, yep, here we are at Wanderlust. There's a lot of youth, a lot of beauty, and there's some great ice cream at Cow's on the stroll there. Rosie from Israel said, I'm inspired by people who are willing to accept differences in others. A few months, well, I met a lot of Israelis, but a few months after that, I was in Istanbul, and I met a group of young Muslim Arab backpackers, which was quite rare. I didn't meet many Arab backpackers. And together we went and we had tea under the shadow of the Blue Mosque. And I'm a Jew, and we started talking about the Middle East. And we were calm, and we were rational, and we listened to each other's arguments. And we came to the conclusion that if world leaders could just sit down and have tea in the same way, the way travelers connect, there wouldn't be nearly the amount of problems there are. So Khalid from Saudi Arabia, when I asked him what he's inspired by, he said, I'm inspired by simplicity. This is my late great-uncle Sol from Australia, and he said, I am inspired by my children's success because I feel like I have a small part in it. Children were a very inspirational answer, and parents in particular were inspired by their children. They were grateful for their children. I never heard one person say, I regret having children. Tenzin in India, in Dharamsala, I managed to see the Dalai Lama and learn all about the Tibetan government in exile. Tenzin works for them, and he said, I regret being born in exile. Jess, so this was a young girl that I met in Argentina. A lot of people told me I regret not doing more, not having lived my life to the fullest. That was a very common answer. And she said, I regret not making more of my life. And I was like, yep, I've kind of heard that, okay. And then she said, before I got cancer. And she was a leukemia survivor. And again, it's how people responded to these questions. Some people really internalized them and thought about them, and other people just threw out answers. She followed up, she said, today I'm grateful for being alive. And that was another very common answer. But when she said it, it actually gave me chills, because she was really grateful for being alive. I was in Greece, and I met a group of Portuguese girls, backpackers as well. And we got through to the questions, and there was this one girl, Olivia, and she was very quiet. And I regret. And she said, I regret not telling my boyfriend how I felt about him before he died. And he had died in a car accident a few weeks before, and she was really broken up about it. And again, it sent kind of like this ripple throughout the whole group of just how lucky we are to be where we are, and how lucky we are to love the people we do, and maybe we should tell them that more often. Christina, I met her in New Zealand. She said, I regret being too honest in inappropriate situations. I totally relate. Jim in Peru said, I regret not having a natural immunity to gastrointestinal pathogens. Wasn't all serious. And Sarah was this hilarious character that I met, and she said, I regret not reading the fine print of my cell phone contract. Here's Magdalena from Greece and Noemi from Chile. I am inspired by, Magdalena says, falling in love. Noemi, I regret falling in love. Love was one of these things like those movies that top the best of and the worst of lists in the same year. It was something that inspired, it was something that caused enormous amounts of pain and hurt and regret as well. So it was really interesting. I found, even in the same conversation, one person could say, I regret, the love of my life. And the person, I inspired by the love of my life, and I regret leaving the love of my life, or that kind of thing. Omar in Malaysia said, today I'm grateful for everything I have. It's the people who complain about shoes who don't think about those who are barefoot. Katie in New Zealand said, today I'm grateful for meeting someone from Iran who gave me an insight into the country. You know, when we go out there and we travel, we have these belief systems, and even when we're at home, we think we know what things are and how they work, but it's really only when you meet people and when you go to places that you can break down those belief systems and actually start figuring out something closer to the truth. Thai in Cambodia said, I'm grateful for the United Nations who helped bring us peace. And if you've been to Cambodia, you know that their recent history is full of pain and scars and wounds. And you know, when you have these kind of conversations, it really does highlight for me first world problems. The stuff that we have to deal with, it's just so different from what other people have to deal with in their lives. Today I'm grateful for, Jody says, what destiny has given me. Fate. Fate seemed to play a lot of roles. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Sorsan in Turkey said, I'm grateful for is just being positive. The happiest people I met were the most positive people I met. Even when something, like when this boat broke down in Turkey, he was a positive guy. And Handy, this was supposed to be a 4-hour bus ride in Albania, and the bus broke down, and then it broke down again, and then it broke down again, and it turned into a 12-hour bus ride, and sitting next to me was this kid, and he said, today I'm grateful for finishing my English studies with excellent results. And I was so grateful to be sitting next to him because he could speak great English and he was hilarious. So, so many interesting conversations. I'm inspired by girls with meat on them walking down the street. Today I'm grateful for an orgasm in the morning, which wasn't from me, I should just add. You know, so many great conversations, and one day I'm hoping to write them all down, who these people are. It always led to something more. You know, when somebody says, Strombo says, I regret quitting piano lessons, I'm like, why? Why did you regret piano lessons? You know, tell me more of the story behind it. You know, finish the sentence isn't online anymore. When I migrated my website and I evolved from being a backpacker into a travel writer, into a TV host, I wasn't sure if all these people would want these personal thoughts so publicly available. I don't know if that's what they signed up for. Maybe they would. You know, I'm not quite sure what to do with it, actually. I've got all these great stories, all this study, if you like, of what's out there in the world and how people think. I don't have any idea how to contact these people. If Facebook was around when I did it, it might have been easier, but today I just have no idea. In fact, today is the first time I've ever spoken about this project publicly. So it's really interesting. But it helped me with those answers that I set out for. You know, as I traveled around the world and over the years, I've definitely managed to get a grip on some of the things I was looking for. But lust itself has proved to be a moving target. Just when I think I got a handle on it, why I love traveling, why I love doing what I do, it seems to transform, to become something different. Ramakrishna, mystic, achieved enlightenment, and he returned to the world and to his followers, and they said, tell us what nirvana is. And he said, the closest approximation to nirvana is laughter. Now, one might argue that the closest approximation to nirvana is nirvana. Whether you're laughing or you're angry, there's so many ways you can react when you realize that there are no big answers to the big questions. The answers evolve, they transform, they grow, just like the questions themselves, and just like the people asking them. We're going to have some time, and I'd love to go around the room and see if anybody would like to share their answers to these 3 questions. And I'll say it exactly like I asked people, in any context you like, however seriously you want to take it. As for me, well, I'm coming to the tail end of a very long journey. Travel and travel writing, being a journalist and a TV host, that's allowed me to see and do more things than any one person should be lucky enough to see and do. And as I've traveled, You know, I've asked myself these questions almost daily, and it's constantly changing. But if I had to tell you today, well, I'm inspired by challenges. I'm inspired by humor, by efficiency, music, characters. I'm inspired by feeling warm wind, getting goosebumps from warm wind. And I'm inspired by things that work when they really, really just have to work. I regret the forces that are both within and beyond our control that hold us back from fulfilling our potential. And really, whatever holds us back from chasing these meaningful adventures, from just doing it. You know, I meet so many people who say, I've always wanted to do that. And I'm always like, just do it. What's holding you back? Whatever it is, I regret that. I also regret mosquitoes and bed bugs and black flies. And this one taxi driver in Bucharest, but that's a different story. And today, I am grateful for my friends and family, my wife and daughter. I'm grateful for so many once-in-a-lifetimes, so many of them, that I have this gift to share them in words and with images, and wonderful opportunities like this to share them with you. Thanks very much.